Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Missing Wolves post-game live stream, whatever we call this type of sports media now. I'm your host, Andrew, and today we got Dane Moore on the pod today. How's it going, Dane?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. This is cool. This is cool.
100%. Thanks for coming on. We're going to have like 45 seconds of just Dane Moore appreciation talk off the top of the pod because I think... I've said it around the beat quite a bit, but being in media is kind of a direct result of Dane Moore responding to Twitter DMs. And without kind of his advice, pointing me to zone coverage, pointing me towards the Canis Hoopus guys that have been super helpful for this career, I wouldn't have been here. So Dane, not only just good person to work with, but owe you a ton on this journey of mine. So thank you, man.
Well, you deserve it, man. You're putting in the work. I've definitely seen that over the years, and we all have there. It's fun to go to a bunch of practices and games and stuff like that, but I know it's a lot of time, and I absolutely I commend you for that.
Well, and you kind of trailblazed for people like me who have like a day job and no journalistic schooling. You kind of did the same thing a few years back where you just what's that?
I do have no journalistic schooling. That's true.
But you kind of did the same thing where you were just like, I want to do this, and you went out and did it. So I'm just trying to follow your path, man.
No, you're killing it, and it's an ever evolving industry, right? And the biggest thing is to show up and kind of see where it takes you, and I always say, and people are like, oh, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I don't know. Who knows what media or content or basketball is going to look like? Because in this industry specifically, it changes. This will be my 9th year on the beat. And I would say what I'm doing individually has been different every single year. And I think that's necessary to work in media these days.
I mean, 100%. I mean, you went from doing really next morning post game every single day podcasts to now bringing the beat together with your interviews with Chris, Jace, Britt, Kyle. I mean, it is something that you do have to consistently evolve, or else it passes you by quick.
Yeah. Well, and that's a hard living. It's hard to make a living in the industry too. So you need to be, you need to be nimble to figure out how to be able to do those things. So it's as Timberwolves fans are very lucky to have, I would first point to John Krasinski and Britt Robson, who have both been on the beat for, I think, over 20 years in John's case, and Britt's over 30. That's unique. You have 2 newspaper writers. That's uncommon in most markets, that you have Jace Frederick and Chris Hine for the Pioneer Press and the Star Tribune. That in and of itself is a thing that fans are lucky to have. And I'd been sitting in that media room with those people when I was getting my start writing for years. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is a podcast. I just gotta make it. And at that time I was trying to be a writer and all those sort of things, but best laid plans, I guess.
Hey, and I mean, you touched on it. Not only are fans lucky to have those guys, yourself included, by the way, but I mean, for young people coming up through media, like John, Jace, Chris, you, Britt, I mean, there is such a welcoming environment in this Wolves kind of system where I feel like a lot of other teams, maybe it's a little bit more cutthroat than what it is.
More competitive. Here. And I mean, and there's always competition, but there's different types of competition, and I think, as we all try to work together as much as we can which in the aggregate, right, helps each other out. So it's smart, and I'm lucky, you're lucky to have all those people, to learn from and just talk with, right? It's good hoops conversation.
Oh, a lot of good basketball minds, which, speaking of basketball, let's just get into it. I just want your general thoughts. How did you feel preseason went for the Wolves? Because if you're looking win-loss record, probably not ideal. If you're looking storyline wise of, is Rob taking the next step? How is TJ going to be a 6th starter? I would argue those maybe weren't as good either, but how do you feel preseason went for this team?
Yeah, well, I mean, preseason's stupid. I mean, it's very little that I think, can learn from it. I think what I try to focus on is training camp and, what they're talking about doing. And there's always intentions, right? We've learned what their intentions are. And just from my experience, what happens is you don't hit all of those intentions, right? I think this year was also unique from a training camp and preseason standpoint. Bring preseason games in there too. You do have great continuity on this team, which I think could have led to a training camp and preseason, even including the games where this team looks like it's firing on all cylinders. And I mean, not to make too much of the first 6 minutes of that Chicago preseason game, but they were not firing on all cylinders, and then they did later on. Like next time the starters all came back in together, they were good. But it was just, for me, kind of a reminder of like, oh yeah, this starting group struggled to start games a season ago. And the reason we pointed to for them struggling to start games is they're acclimating with Julius Randle and a different starting group. Well, you've acclimated. It's been a year. And that Chicago game has me going, well, I'm not sure. Are they going to hit the ground running in the first 6 minutes against Portland on Wednesday? You would hope so, but I don't think I would feel more confident about it if I'd seen the starting group firing on all cylinders, like in tandem together during the preseason a little bit more. But yeah, largely, I think the vibes are high and everybody's banking on continuity. The people who weren't comfortable, I think, a year ago because they just gotten traded here, or even Mike Conley and Jaden McDaniels and Rob Dillingham, all of a sudden they have a different sort of role and position here. Everybody knows their roles, and I think it's about executing them. But that's a major win, I think, or it starts you on a different level than other teams who are still kind of finding themselves.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, everybody knows their role. Everybody's paid. There's no real free agents that are on this team this year. And 1 through 7, it's kind of solidified. I think to your point of just, that Chicago game gave me vibes of last year too, where it was just like, oh, is this going to be another season? And that excuse is kind of gone. I think the hope for me would be that, there are a lot of veteran guys on this team that are probably just like we are, looking at the preseason and going, I mean, sure. Is it even worth that? Finch didn't have most of them show up in Philadelphia. So maybe that was just the vibe of it, but it was a little concerning watching that one. Mike,
just the beginning of the game, though, it got better. It was just that first 6 minutes where, that there was 15, 20 games last season where you were like, all right, and it's 13-2 Blazers, and that just shouldn't. And they would come back and do all those things, but it was this. They didn't start it out hot, which there's no reason this team can't be starting games well and starting the season well. I think all the idealistic sort of visions of this team are about hot starts to games, hot starts to the season. Because that banks on what you have on this team, which is continuity.
I mean, there was so many games last year where I would turn to whoever's sitting next to me and just be like, do they know if they just start the game how they finish, they get to take the fourth quarter off? Like they can just not play if they build a lead. But so often they were just down early. And a lot of the discussion this preseason has been on, I've been kind of framing it as like playing like Indiana, get out and fast break, better on ball defense, better kind of structure when you're getting rebounds. Where's the ball go? And it's gotten me to think a lot. Like, do you think this team is like wired that way in their DNA where they can play that type of basketball? Because I feel like certain players have shown it. Like Mike and Rudy have shown it in Utah. Mike has shown it in Memphis even. Dante and Julius, I feel like, have that capability. Jaden and Ant early in their career. But it seems like all of them together, that has been just a really big struggle for them, is playing. I don't want to say playing hard because you don't know what's going through these guys' minds, but like playing in that high energy type of way.
Yeah, well, from a tempo standpoint, of an intention of getting out in transition standpoint, which is the number one thing we've heard about in training camp for this team, I don't think any of those guys have played Indiana that you just listed there have played Indiana Pacers intention of getting out in transition. Yes, I think everybody could grab and go get out on the transition a little bit more, turn some of that on. But what the Pacers and some of these other teams around the league, I point to Oklahoma City as well.
Yep.
They have baked this into their identity, and it's something that they do instinctually. I thought it was interesting after the Wolves played the Pacers in the preseason. Chris Hine and I did a podcast after that game, after we'd gone and done post-game press conferences. And Chris went over to the Indiana locker room to talk to a few of the players about, you guys have this baked into your identity of getting out in transition and playing with the speed. How did that happen? And I think it was Andrew Nemhard he talked to and maybe Aaron Neesmith. And they both were like, it took a year. It took a year to make it in, any bit instinctual. That's something that they really did last season. I don't think it had fully flowered 2 seasons ago. And I think they probably started putting that in place 3 seasons ago as they got to better understand what was going to be best for Tyrese. So, yeah, I say that to mean it's just a piece of anecdotal evidence I'm skeptical that this is going to be something where, we're looking at NBA.com a month into the season. I'll be surprised if the Wolves are in the top half of the league in pace or top half of the league in transition frequency. They were bottom 5 in those things a season ago. And I would anticipate it's probably somewhere between the middle and the bottom there. But hopefully, right, you're starting to establish habits. And I think that's the long game that Finch is trying to play here is establishing habits, because you probably can't be a team that's as slow as the Wolves were and win at the highest level in today's NBA. I think that's the theory behind this.
I think it's a pretty good theory when you're looking at Oklahoma City. Boston plays pretty quick too, even with like Horford on the floor. They seem to run pretty well. And Indiana's the example I use because I feel like they're the most stark kind of contrast of everyone remembers the Obi Toppin game where he's hitting transition 3 after transition 3 against them. I've heard a lot of, Chris Finch after practices saying, we're not going to be top 10 in pace. We have Rudy and almost not blaming it on Rudy, but at least like insinuating that we got some slow guys on our team. Where would you say the ideal is for them though? Like is middle of the pack going to be enough to kind of be in contention, or do you feel like they need to get into that top 10 type of category?
Yeah, well, I don't think all pace is created equal either.
Yeah.
There's you could look at some of the top teams in transition frequency or pace, and they're bad teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how are you doing it in a way that's effective for your roster, right? Because also part of transition that you don't think about sometimes is what do you do when you try to get out in transition, the defense is back, and now you have to flow into something else. And I think what Finch is getting at there is one, Rudy's going to be back by the rim, and that's going to generally a longer run for him. He's not that fast, but I think part of it is just about, kind of stylistically how he plays and how they play. But Rudy can run the floor more, and sprint down, but it's also one of those things where you want him to do that consistently. You probably got to feed him a little bit on the running in that sort of way. I do think it's something in the non-Rudy minutes that has no excuse. The only reason they wouldn't be playing faster is they're just not doing it with that group. You have, Nas at the 5, who can be who can run as fast as anybody on the team, probably faster than the guy who's guarding him. So he can dive all the way through. And he's an elite trail big, that's what Rudy doesn't have, right? Is all Rudy can do is kind of sprint end to end, look for it as he's cutting down the middle or reposition himself to the dunker spot, which is why me just in general, so long as this is a Rudy Gobert team, I think there's an element of you do need to, you can't just do all the modern NBA things.
Yeah.
You can't have your starting center shoot threes. I don't think you can, you can be a top team in transition. I do think if you have Rudy Gobert, you need to be a team that runs a really high volume of pick and roll. I think you need to play spread pick and roll. He's a very defining player just to style. That's his archetype of player is that. So that said, there's room for growth off of it, right? They don't need to be 27th. There's no need for that. And I think Rudy will acclimate to anything that works. I think he wants to win above anything else. So if it is working and it is winning, he will do it.
I mean, Rudy seems like the type of person that just needs a little bit of evidence behind it, where, like, to your point, if it's winning, if you can show him raw numbers of like, this is what's happening when we are playing faster, when you're running all the way through rim to rim, like, I think he'll buy onto it. You mentioned the second unit, and coincidentally at practice today, you asked you asked Chris a question regarding Mike Conley, and it raised our eyes a little bit just about how healthy Mike has been, which directly ties into the next thing I wanted to talk about, was just Rob. For people who haven't seen or listened to the clip, Finch had kind of alluded to maybe Mike being a little more dinged up this preseason than we had known. But if that's the case, it almost drives home the Rob needs to take this opportunity point faster. How do you kind of feel about the Wolves point guard situation, especially if Mike maybe isn't at 100% right now?
Well, let me answer your question with a question.
Of course.
Let's say Mike Conley can't play right now. Like, he's injured and he couldn't play. I think, to clarify what it was, and I haven't listened back to the clip, but I think it was just kind of like some bumps and bruises. So it sounded like he hasn't been fully participating in everything in training camp. Maybe that's what that was.
Yep.
But people just in general, outside of Finch saying that, have like the opinion of don't play Mike. He's what's holding you back. He's the reason Rob Dillingham can't get minutes and Jalen Clark can't get minutes and all that. What do you think would happen if Mike Conley was out for the first month of the season and Rob Dillingham started and played that like 28 minutes a night at point guard?
I think they would maybe lose an extra 2 games just from growing pains. Rob's going to have a 9 turnover game. Rob's going to have a game where he fouls and it's out. I'll be honest though, I don't think Rob would get 28 minutes if Mike was out for a month. I feel like it would be probably Dante starting and getting closer to 30. Maybe Bones is getting a lot more burned than Rob. I feel kind of almost irregardless of Mike at this point that Rob's probably starting the season of like 15. But I don't
whatever the number is, you think that he will lead to losing basketball, correct? Is that what you just said?
If Rob's playing 28 minutes, I think you can tack on like an extra 1 or 2 losses. Not like, instead if Mike misses the
only
first
15 games in a month, two losses is a lot in 15 games.
Yeah, I still think I'd say that. I think it would be a change, but that might be because I'm overvaluing Mike as just the maestro of being able to set everything up, telling people where to be, just the vibe check of everyone's plus minus is traditionally better playing with Mike. But I really think if Mike were to miss a considerable amount of time, you'd see Dante get a lot more point guard minutes. And I think you'd see Bones more than you'd see Rob in those emergency minutes. And that's, I don't think that's like an indictment of Rob's. What's that?
I think it'd be Rob over Bones, but
you think so?
Yeah.
I just have this gut feeling. I just have this gut feeling that Bones is going to have a bigger role on this team than people expect by the end of the year.
That would just raise some major flags if Bones Highland is playing more minutes than Rob Dillingham. I mean, I guess and the only way that's happening is if Rob Dillingham is failing miserably, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So that's in the realm of possibilities for you is that Rob Dillingham contributes to losing basketball and fails.
I don't want it to happen. I'll preface this by saying, like, I really like Rob. Seems like a really good kid. Like, he puts in a ton of work. He's glued to Pablo. Like, I really want him to be good. It's just, for me, I'm still really concerned about the turnovers. And it's been at every level, from Donda Academy to Kentucky, rookie season, summer league, preseason. He just has this way of losing control of the game and just turning the ball over in bunches, which, I mean, one, if that starts to happen, I think Finch is really going to be tempted to just have that quick hook and say, Dante, get out there. You're safer. And two, I mean, Bones, if it truly has clicked, which I'll be honest, I've talked to, like, your guy Adam Mares over with DNVR. It sounds like Bones has always been able to say the right things, and when he gets on the court, maybe it doesn't go to plan. But if he really is kind of accepting this role of being more of a point guard and a playmaker than just a shot maker, he's almost the opposite of Rob, where his numbers all the way back to VCU, solid assist to turnover ratio, solid assist percentages when he's on the court. I just feel like if push came to shove, Finch would go with the guy that's less turnover prone.
Yeah, it just, that opens up the other box of where are you getting the minutes from? And so I'm trying to operate in what I think is more of a reality, which is talking about there being, 9 guys in the rotation, and thinking about it through the lens of the reality that Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo are going to play a lot.
Yep.
So I think even if you, in this hypothetical, took Mike out of the rotation,
which,
I don't know how
clear, is probably like 25 minutes, right? Like,
for Mike.
Yeah. Or do you think he's going to be getting the 30, 34 that he was getting last year at times?
No, maybe not 30. I think there'll be more of a intention to put in that Mike is playing genuine shifts and not just like little 3 or 4 minute stints. That didn't work last year. I don't think he's comfortable that way. But I don't know. It's whatever. Everybody can do whatever they want. But if we start doing the thing where we're like, oh, Baron J is going to play and Jalen Clark, and then it's going to be a 3-headed replacement of Nickeil Alexander-Walker with Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham, and Jalen Clark. I'm like, okay, that's a lot.
They're all going to play 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, and then I mean, I don't know. It's we just did this last year, we did this last year, and what ends up happening, unless you significantly reduce Naz or Dante's minutes, or even Nikhil's were limited at the beginning of the season, or remove Mike from the rotation altogether, which I know is some people's stances, but that's not something Chris Finch is going to do. I just don't know. I think we need to, like, treat the pile of players that are out of the rotation as the pile of players that are out of the rotation, and then injuries will come. I'm not saying Bones Highland isn't going to play in a game this year. Mm-hmm. I agree. What I've heard and saw from him in training camp, too, my like one sentence take on Bones Highland would be like the third string point guard were cool, like you got a third string point guard, but I just think we could do dangerous things in the preseason and extrapolate it out to be a little bit more than it is.
Let me ask you, I'll ask you the same question. Do you feel like Rob is a winning player at this point, or what are your thoughts on him?
I mean, I think it's historically extremely unlikely that a 19-year-old rookie point guard would have a positive impact on winning. That bears out. You could say Rob didn't get the opportunity to be able to show that last year. So I can't, if Rob would have played 18 minutes a night for the whole season, maybe that's different. But historically speaking, right, that's not something that really clicks together immediately at that position. He didn't play, so he doesn't have a lot of experience to have grown off of that level. And then he, even amongst the like phylum of characters in the NBA of point guards, he's extremely small.
Yeah.
And what that is going to expose, less so on offense, is just what he can't do defensively. Even though we like the effort he puts in there, he is going to get attacked situationally. And I think we're moving towards a league that situationally attacks more and more, even during the regular season, when that was used to just be like a hunting thing in the playoffs. So there's a lot, just nothing sight unseen of Rob Dillingham, I think, working against him on historical precedent towards being a productive player right now. So that would be my assumption. But that assumption is not based in having seen him play. And so I can't stamp anything, like seeing him play in like 8 summer league games over a couple of years and playing 12 minutes a night one time here, and then a month later playing 14 minutes in another game. I don't know Rob Dillingham well enough as a basketball player to know what he can or can't do. But if I had to make a decision as Chris Finch, or just an assumption based on logic, I think that assumption would say that Rob Dillingham is probably, you're still hoping that if he plays in 3 games, one of the 3 games is good, and the reality is the second one's going to kind of be like, and the third one's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So can you afford that? Can you afford that when you are a team in the Western Conference that has a standard to not only upkeep, but to exceed this season? It puts Rob in an extremely difficult situation. And I think it puts Finch in a bad one too. I think it's a genuine conundrum, even though we're talking about like the 9th man here.
I mean, it is such a hard spot for Rob to be in, because, playing point guard isn't like it was in the 2000s, right? Like, it's not just entry pass to a post player. Everything runs off of pick and rolls, especially with this Wolves team, where you need to be able to kind of decipher the defense's response to a Rudy pick and roll and then capitalize off that on the next play. And it's just hard without real reps. And I know the Wolves developmental staff is really good, but I'm kind of with you of just, for me, the turnovers have been the most kind of concerning throughout his path. But like you said, it's hard. He is small, and there isn't a lot of NBA tape on him. So I do think what do they call themselves? The Dilling Hive? Is that the online Dillingham fan base? I think they're going to be pissed again this year, because I don't know the opportunity he's going to get.
Yeah. I want to say one thing about like being a point guard versus being a player who can function in pick and roll. I think that's a distinction to be made. And I don't think Rob Dillingham came in as a point guard. I think Rob Dillingham came into the league as a player who can function at a high level in pick and roll, or theoretically could. And I think that's still that's likely where we're at with this, right? Because that's stylistically how he's played. I think to that end, he's in a really good environment to tap into that skill set, because he's going to get a ton of second side actions operating, on the opposite side of the floor from Anthony Edwards or Julius Randle, who are attacking an advantage, right? Rob should be able to use his first step against a shifted defense. And if the defense has recovered, he should be able to quickly get into pick and roll with Naz or Rudy. I really could see that piece of Rob as the quote unquote point guard working. I don't think we're going to think of him as the point guard when he starts playing. If we're watching how it moves, you're going to be like, that's the shortest guy, but that's going to be Mike Conley is the shortest guy and playing point guard when he's out there. I don't think it's going to feel like that when Rob's out there and he's playing well. And I actually think that's a reason to buy it, because if the role was specifically, Rob, we need you to go be Mike Conley, he's probably further away from being able to go be Mike Conley than he is from being able to be a dynamic, attacking a defense or with his first step, or in shifted defense, kind of side pick and roll. I think he could do those things. But that requires his teammates putting him in position to do that. So there's some contingencies, I think, that are not all his his own in this situation.
He's going to have such an interesting role, right? Because they also need him to bring the ball up, because we saw it in the postseason. Mike just the level of physicality and aggression OKC brought to Mike bringing the ball up. Like, they need someone that can just burst and get a ball up quick. So
do you think Rob Dillingham would do a better job of that than Mike Conley?
You're pulling on my Mike Conley heartstrings, Dane.
That sounds like the base of your theory.
I think theoretically, if Rob is confident this postseason, he could do a better job of it than Mike Conley could, just because first step, getting the ball, the baseline speed and burst to get it up. But I don't feel comfortable having him run an offense, to your point, and kind of what I was saying earlier. So it would be like an inbound to Rob, him breaking that 3/4 press or full court press or kind of aggression, and then kicking it over to Ants or Julius to kind of start the play, which is such a weird role for a guy like Rob to be in, where, hey, bring the ball up, break it, do the hard stuff, and then kick it over to somebody else to run the offense. And you are going to be maybe a second or third option off of a play.
I don't think I agree. I think Mike Conley is far and away the best at breaking that down. I think, yes, there was times in the Thunder series that he got ripped. But I think there's nobody better suited to break ball pressure on this team than Mike Conley by like a mile and a half. Though I don't think that's the most important thing when we're talking about turnovers and stuff like that. Teams are not going to full court press this team very often,
right? Especially in the regular season too.
Yeah. So I don't see it to be all that relevant of a topic. I think it's about how are you handling the ball when in action in the half court? And that extends beyond Rob Dillingham and Mike Conley to, Ant and Julius, and not turning it over there. That's where the issues are. That's where the issues in the Oklahoma City stole it from the Wolves in the backcourt a handful of times in that series. What they did that was a lot more problematic is they contained the ball on the perimeter and stole it, or did not allow Julius primarily or Mike to get to where he wanted to go, or Ant simultaneously too with gap help. So I think that's the Rob Dillingham point guard piece that you want is not bringing the ball up the court. I think that's pretty irrelevant. And I think what you're describing is actually an extremely common role of just like pistol as soon as you get into the offense, right? You bring the ball up the floor. Think about DiVincenzo doing this all the time. Ant elevates from the corner and you just get into it and you start going that way. Ant's kind of peeling off of it with a little bit of a head of steam. Rob could do that piece fine. I think that'll be very normal. I think he changes things for you if, when in ball containment, a really good defender is guarding him, that he has a better ability to use that first step to get by that guy than Julius might, need to use force to get through Jalen Williams or Lou Dort or Alex Caruso. I think those are different things. And I think that's Rob's specialty is being able to use that first step so as to condense the defense without, losing the ball. I think Rob could definitely be good at that. His turnovers are more, I think, vision-based, jump passes, more a product of inexperience and size, which I think those things can be somewhat, taken care of more. Off the dribble, I'm not that Rob's like a 10 out of 10 there, but I think he could help actually in the half court that way.
So that's kind of where you see his primary role then, is if this were to work out. Is being more of that off ball kind of not running the offense per se.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's his best role. I think that is his role. I mean, it's kind of Mike Conley's role too. And this is all weird in how we define point guard or what it is or what it isn't. But the ball, whether you like it or not, is going to wind up in Ant's hands at the top of the key, Julius's hands in the slot, or maybe now Ant's like hands through some sort of extended post-up situation. That's what the start of offensive possessions is going to look like. I don't know. I'm not saying there's not going to be just starting with a high Mike and Rudy pick and roll here and there, or Naz and Rob and Matt. Obviously, you're going to mix some of that in. But when they're playing through the flow is going to get to one of those spots, I think, on almost every single possession, right? So frankly, I find the point guard discussion piece a little irrelevant on the roster, but find the turnover piece of the point guard thing that you're talking about extremely relevant. This team needs to take better care of the ball. This team needs to be able to find ways to score when they're meeting resistance. I'm really curious about this Portland game, right? You got really good perimeter defenders, and then you got Klingon at the rim, right? Like, I'm sure that team, Portland's going to struggle to score offensively, but they're going to present real resistance. Like, can you break that resistance? And I don't think without Rob, this team can like really, really do that at a high level. I think and I'm not saying he certainly can either, but he's like you're part of your pathway to that not being a major problem for this team.
Right. Which I think that's when it comes to this Wolves team. And I know I said we'd do a half an hour and we're at minute 36. So just cut your screen to black and run away if you need to. But like, I think this Wolves team is going to be, I feel like, good regardless. Like they're a playoff team. I feel like they've proven it, but like it is these little things like Rob's ability to attack, cutting down the turnovers, that are probably the difference makers for this team being a championship caliber team versus just a playoff team, which I'd love to just get your thoughts. I mean, what do you feel like the ceiling is for this team if things were to work out? Like TJ is this, blur in transition. His defense is good enough for him to guard 1 through 4. Rob is impactful off the bench. Dante is fitting in. Julius is fitting in. Like where could you see this team kind of plateauing or topping out at?
Yeah, I don't see it so much as like individuals. I think individuals contribute to pieces. Sure. Okay, I'll use this as an example. Like, I think Nickeil really fed the Timberwolves identity.
Yeah.
In that he contributed to the areas where they were best when they were best. But you wouldn't really say like, oh, it's just one thing. Like Nickeil, if Nickeil does this one thing, then it's good. He kind of has to do all of it. And so I don't think you're going to find that answer in Terrence Shannon Jr. I don't think you're going to solve your transition issues because Terrence Shannon Jr. plays 18 minutes a game.
Correct.
I don't think you're going to solve your ball containment issues necessarily if Jalen Clark is on the floor for 15 minutes a game. And I don't know if you're going to solve your turnover issues if Rob Dillingham is on the floor. I'm looking at those 3 areas of, can you be a team that gets back to containing the ball on the perimeter at a high level with consistency? Can you be a team that gets out in transition more often? And can you be a team when you're in the half court, does not turn the ball over at a high rate? Is that one player? I wouldn't even say that's all even just Ant. Like Ant, sure, you need him to water all 3 of those plants. But I think once you get to this level as a team who has really advanced far in the playoffs, it's about global improvements in the areas where you're deficient. And I do think they understand what those areas of deficiency are. I think it's an open question of their ability to be able to address them, right? We need to see that. And then even if you address it for the first month, you're getting out in transition for the first month. Cool. Are you going to do that in January on a back-to-back, right? Ball containment, it's not fun. Like the way Nickeil Alexander-Walker played defense is not fun. Are you gonna go do that when it's not fun in January on a back-to-back, or even half the time in January games? Like it's just these things are hard. But when we talk about the gap, between where this team has been the past couple of years and ultimately going to the finals or winning the finals, like those are non-negotiables, I think, to that level of success. Yeah. It sounds, if you're sitting here thinking like, Dane, I do not think they're going to contain the ball like they did 2 years ago. Dane, I do not think they're going to be a top half of the league in transition. Dane, I do not think they're going to turn the ball over a lot less. Well, then you don't think the Timberwolves are a contender. That's just at least the way I see it.
No, and I love how you said that, because you're 100% right. Like, it's not just TJ Shannon is running in transition, the transition is fixed. It's, he's kind of an example of, like, if these problems get fixed, I feel like they really have a chance this year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not to like beat Oklahoma City, just because I love Oklahoma City, I'll just be honest, but like, I think they have a chance to at least make it a series where it's not just 5 games and it's kind of over. I'm really interested to see, though, and you mentioned Ant and said even if Ant is doing this, it probably doesn't make the end all be all difference. But how confident are you that Ant is going to be doing some of these things that, I mean, like the off ball defense has been an on and off again issue for most of his career, even ball contain on those games against bad teams, he kind of falls off on. How confident are you that this is going to be the year for Ant where he starts to show that every night, almost every play, versus some of these days where he's taking it off?
Yeah, I think he's going to do more of all 3 of them. The ball containment, getting out in transition, and controlling the ball so as to not turn it over. I think he understands the assignment a lot better than he did a couple years ago. But he was pretty behind the curve in some of those areas. So I think it's going to be better in every area. Is it going to be significantly better? And is that even fair to hold him to that? I don't,
Yeah.
It needs to be a significantly better defender. Is that fair to ask for? He probably does, given that this team lacks the defensive personnel it had 2 years ago, right? You don't have Kyle Anderson anymore. You don't have Nickeil Alexander-Walker anymore. You don't even have Cat anymore, who I think helped that defense. Yeah. So if we agree that you probably got to be a top 5 defense that defense translates over to the playoffs to be a contender, well, then Ant needs to be a hell of a lot better defensively, off ball and on ball. I think he'll be better. Is he going to be a hell of a lot better, And then on down the line, like, do these things sink in, and we get a month or 6 weeks in the season or something, and we go, Ant has a lot better habits this year. If we're saying that 6 weeks into the season, then like, look out, because not only is it a big gap between, I think, the level he was at in those areas and where he needs to be, or just to be really consistent with it. There's so much power in that too. If he does, that's the leap. I don't know. People want the leap to be fadeaway 17-footers and stuff like that. That might be the little gold star. I know, for real. Like those are going to be nice things when he's hitting that. And it's going to make people who aren't watching very often go, he does look more like Michael Jordan. But I'm going to be here telling you he's playing more like Michael Jordan when he's making up for that gap in all these boring areas like ball containment and playing under control in the half court, manipulating defenses. Like, yeah, that's the next horizon for Ant. And, the being an efficient mid-range player is like sprinkles on top.
I talked to Chris Hine about it when he was on the pod a week or 2 ago, but like, I completely agree. If Ant's running all the way to the corner on a fast break, if he's doing better gap help, if he's not getting back cut by Luke Kennard, like, those are the things that are going to make a lot bigger difference. And I guess my biggest concern with it is those are the things that you don't get any praise for. I mean, you'll notice, everyone in the press pool will notice, but you're not going to be on an ESPN top 10. You're not going to be on a highlight reel for running all the way to your space on a fast break. Or
who's going to notice though, man?
Finch.
You know who's going to notice? No, the win column in the standings is going to
notice. You're right.
That's just it. Like, and
you're
he said as much.
Right.
He said as much at training or at media day, where he was like, "What do I need to do to win MVP? We need to win a hell of a lot of games." That's just true. He's already got the Q score stuff, man. Like, Ant playing at a higher basketball IQ level with a greater consistency is not going to stop him from dunking on people. It's not going to stop him from having a quarter where he makes 5 threes. Those things are all there. Like, those are knowns. Like,
those are built in with the Anthony Edwards experience.
Yes, these are the tides that like raise all boats, however that saying goes. So I think Ant understands that. I don't think he understood that 2 or 3 years ago. I think he understands that, if he wants those things, that praise, that the comparisons, the legacy sort of stuff, I think Ant is fully aware of the fact that is all going to grow exponentially if they win 58 games this season. Yeah. And that there's power in that. I don't think that necessarily means he's going to do it every single night, but I think he's aware of that being a thing. He was not aware of that being a thing on a Monday night against Charlotte 3 years ago, when Cat had 63 points or whatever, and they lost. That version of Ant didn't get this stuff. From where I'm sitting, from what I'm hearing, I think there is a evolution in Ant mentally. Can he do it over and over and over again? Can he do the boring stuff? He also said at Media Day, greatness is boring. So, saying the right things.
He's saying the right things. There is a little bit of a different vibe, even when players are talking about him. Dane, that's all I had for the pod today, though. Man, thank you so much for doing this. Anytime you want to do it again, I'm doing post games all year, so you're always more than welcome. I appreciate you so much. I do want to give you space, though. I give it to everyone, no matter how big or small they are. Anything you want to shout out, anything you want to plug. Are you writing a book? Anything new going on in Dane's life that we should know about?
No, I have no book. No extra stuff. I'm doing my show. That's what I do. Is we're going to be doing my show like 4 or 5, trying to do 5 times a week this season. So yeah, you'll be doing the post game pods, and we'll be doing daily shows the next morning. And yeah, obviously, if people want to listen and they like it, listen. And if you don't, that's all right too.
Awesome. Thanks, Dane. For everyone that is tuning in, we will do the first post game after the Portland game on Wednesday. Dane will be in Portland, if I remember right, along with Johnny K and some of the other guys. But until then, we'll catch you next time.